السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما، رب زدنا علما نافعا، آمين. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما، آمين يا رب العالمين. After finishing the discussion about Islamic ontology and theology, we have to move towards Islamic epistemology. But before doing that, I want to discuss about al-aql, the intellect, in few sessions, because epistemology is about knowledge. Is knowledge possible? What is the method of acquiring knowledge? What are the different sources of knowledge? And the object of knowledge, the tool by which we acquire knowledge, is aql, with agreement, the intellect. So it would be appropriate that we understand the object of knowledge before moving to other discussions about knowledge. And this is also relevant because whole discussion in religion, philosophy, thought revolves around al-aql and an-naql, the knowledge which is revealed and the knowledge which is acquired by aql. So let's take or summarize the discussions about al-aql in 2 or 3 sessions, and then we move to understanding knowledge and different sources of knowledge. It would make more sense after being acquainted with the object of knowledge, which is al-aql. And this will also give us understanding of the fact that there is a lot of confusion between human beings and particularly Muslims in understanding these matters. Most of us think that every rational argument is logical or is logically consistent. And we use this tool sometimes to substantiate the proof or understanding of things. So for example, when we talk about angels, some people, they say this is illogical. Do you believe in angels in 21st century? Or many other matters. So it's, inshallah, important to understand the meaning of aql and the different ways of understanding al-aql. How do our scholars approach this matter? And by that, we will be released from the confusion and shubha of misappropriating aql in our discussions in understanding higher realities. So let's begin. The first point, we will discuss this in a logical progression, inshallah. As we have, by now we have understood that Islamic thought is confined in 2 groups of scholars, al-falasifa and al-mutakallimun. Al-falsafa, Islamic philosophy, and ilmul kalam, the kalam, Islamic theology, we can call it. But it's always better to use our own terminology in Arabic. As we have explained, there are sometimes differences, and translation, it distorts the meaning most of the time. So we have falasifa and mutakallimun. In falasifa, the main philosophers are Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Ibn Rushd. These are the main philosophers who contributed to the field of philosophy, for Muslim philosophers, of course. In Ilm al-Kalam, the main schools of thought in Kalam are three. Al-Asha'ira, the school of Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Al-Maturidiyya, the school of Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. And Al-Mu'tazila, the school of Mu'tazila with its scholars. And then we have the Hanabila also, Muhaddithun. But their school is not considered a school of Ilm al-Kalam in a technical sense, because they, in principles, they agreed with Ash'ari and Maturidiyya. And this is a big misconception between Muslims who think that Muhaddithun and Hanabila, they disagreed with Ash'ari and Maturidiyya. They disagreed in details. In most of the principles, they agreed, because the scholars of Kalam, they base their principles on the Book of Allah and Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They only use aql in understanding those principles. Otherwise, if we say that their primary source of understanding is aql, then we cannot differentiate between falasifa and mutakallimun. What is the difference between Muslim philosophers and the scholars of Kalam? If for both, the primary source of understanding is aql, or they prefer aql on narrated knowledge, or naql, then there is no difference. But we see, and we have seen, there are basic disagreements between falasifa and ilm al-kalam. In fact, the foundation of animosity and disagreement and polemics is between mutakallimun and falasifa. So both use aql. All Muslims, they use aql. Aql is important, but they disagree in methodology of using aql. So we have these schools of thought, falasifa and mutakallimun. If we want to understand in any perspective, any aspect of Islamic thought or Islamic worldview, we have to be acquainted with the Muslim philosophers and falsafa al-Islamiyya and ilm al-kalam. Without that, we cannot understand these matters. And those who refuted kalam, and the most prominent from them is Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, and his students and his school of thought, they are also considered mutakallimun. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is a mutakallim himself. So when you engage in polemics, when you engage in agreement and disagreement in a particular field of knowledge, you're considered from that field. So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Ibn Qayyim and others, they are not against aql or using aql in aqidah or using rational evidences. They disagree with philosophers and mutakallimun in some matters, in branches, in details, as we have seen in the previous sessions. So we can say Ibn Taymiyyah is a separate school of thought in ilm al-kalam. He himself is a mutakallim par excellence. Okay, so no need to exaggerate in these matters. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has pointed to this in many works. He says we are not against aql or evidences or ilm al-kalam. In fact, using aql is obligatory. But, and this is the methodology of the Salaf. But we want to differentiate between al-kalam al-sunni and al-kalam al-bid'i. He uses this terminology. The Sunni kalam, which is based on Quran and Sunnah, and the innovative kalam. According to him, but he is also, after all, a human being. He may commit mistakes in understanding things. And this is what has been narrated from the Salaf. For example, Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, the famous saying which we hear, we see, everyone knows this about mutakallimin, Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, he was against ilm al-kalam, and it has been narrated from him that the punishment of those who study ilm al-kalam is that they should be publicly shamed and they should be punished, and it should be announced that this is the punishment of those who engage in ilm al-kalam and leave the book of Allah and sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. There are many narrations which have been narrated from him. But if you go to the original sources, like these narrations with connected chains appear in the book of Imam al-Bayhaqi, rahimahullah, Manaqibu al-Imam al-Shafi'i. After narrating these riwayat, Imam al-Bayhaqi explains that Imam al-Shafi'i did not mean ilm al-kalam as a field of knowledge. He only meant the people of innovation, particularly Mu'tazila, or extremist deviants from Mu'tazila. This is what he says. He says here he is doing a critique or engaging in critique of wrong ilm al-kalam, which is not based on Quran and Sunnah. The correct form of ilm al-kalam is always appreciated. And this is how he explains. Now, we should take, because it is Imam al-Bayhaqi, rahimahullah, who has narrated these riwayat from Imam al-Shafi'i with connected chains. We should take his explanation also, and Imam al-Bayhaqi, rahimahullah, is a great scholar. But of course, we know Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he criticized some muhaddithin also who were influenced by ilm al-kalam, according to him. And Bayhaqi is the most prominent from them. We should learn from these scholars. The point here is, all these matters, today we are talking about aql or other matters of Islamic thought, Islamic worldview, higher principles, aqidah, we should understand from, or we should be acquainted with the tradition of falsafa, philosophy, and ilm al-kalam. Okay, this is what we are doing. We're trying to understand these matters from both falasifa and mutakallimun, to create at least an awareness or understanding, a balanced narrative. And in understanding the matters, the methodology of comparative analysis is always the best. If you only know one side of the picture, your hukum, your judgment on that will be misleading, wrong. So if you only know Asha'ira, you will never be able to understand these matters. You have to understand all of them. And this is the best methodology in knowledge, encompassing all schools of thought, and then creating a balanced opinion. This is where we, and our scholars also, they commit the mistakes. And for example, in refuting Hanafiya, we take it from the books of other schools of thought in fiqh. So if I want to understand the mistakes of Hanafi scholars in fiqh, I go to the books of Hanabila. This is wrong methodology. You should be acquainted with the original sources. Okay. So let's talk about aql. In today's session, we will focus on understanding aql from the perspective of falasifa, Muslim philosophers, because it is they who discussed aql and the different forms and levels of aql and the details about aql. They discussed it more than other scholars because this was their field. Aql, cognition, understanding is related to falsafa. So the discussions about aql, the definitions of aql, it appears more in the books of falasifa. And the mutakallimun and the mainstream Muslim scholars, whether fuqaha, muhaddithun, in their works, when they explain about aql, they take it from the philosophers. They take definitions, explanations. They disagree in many matters, but they take it from the philosophers because it is they who explained it for the first time. And the Muslim philosophers, of course, they took many things from the Greek philosophers, as we have explained. But they disagreed, like the example of Ibn Sina, his disagreement with Aristotle in understanding the foundations. So here also, they did not take it in the form of blind imitation, but they explained, they disagreed, they agreed, so on and so forth. Now, in today's session, let's focus on how Muslim philosophers, falasifa, understand aql. Okay, and then we move to the mainstream scholars, mutakallimun and others, because when we reach the end, it will all be based on the beginning. Yani today's session. That's why let's focus on this masala. Linguistically, aql in Arabic language carries the meaning of, it carries two meanings. Al-man'u and al-habsu. To stop, to restrict, to prohibit, and to restrain. Al-habs means to restrain something, to confine something. This is the meaning of aql in Arabic language. So they gave this meaning to aql because aql restrains a human being from evil behavior, from immorality, from shar, from evil, from harm. It restrains a human being from these evil qualities. Okay, so this meaning of restraining, confining, stopping, prohibiting is intrinsic to this word, al-aql. And from this, as we know, is iqal of ba'ir, the rope of the animal, the rope by which we tie the animal. So by tying the animal, we restrain it, we confine it. And if we have to slaughter the animal, we tie it. Particularly, the Arabs would tie the camel. So this meaning of restraining, confining is present in this word, al-aql, iqal. And in the Quran also, other variants of this word, they carry the same meaning. For example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the word an-nuha, for aql, an-nuha. And it comes from an-nahi, which means prohibition. Al-amru bil ma'ruf wan-nahyu 'anil munkar. An-nuha comes from prohibition, because aql stops, prohibits, restrains, confines a human being or the one who has aql from evil behavior, from crossing the limits. Ulin nuha. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in describing the ayat, the signs, Allah says that these signs are only understood by ulin nuha, the people of, the possessors of aql. And Allah calls it nuha. And in Surah Taha, ayah 54, in Surah Taha again, ayah 128, Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن في ذلك لآيات لأولي النهى. People of understanding. Indeed, in that are signs for those of intelligence. Again, in the Quran also, nuha means aql, because aql, in its basic meaning, connotes the meaning of al-man'u wal-habsu, restraining, confining, stopping, prohibiting. Okay, so this is how the Arabs would extract the meanings or use a particular word to connote the meaning. Now, aql is not something which can be perceived by senses. So it is not mahsus, which we can see. It is ma'qul, which we know exists, but we cannot see it. We can see the brain. Is aql in the brain or in the heart? This is a different discussion. We will go to that, inshallah. But aql is metaphysical. And for metaphysical realities, when the Arabs, they wanted to coin a word, they would use a word which would mention the athar of that reality, the athar, the effect of that reality. Because when we say al-man'u and habsu, restraining, confining, stopping, this is not aql in itself. We are not defining the mahiyya of aql. We are not defining the essence of aql. We are only defining the effect of aql. We say aql restrains, aql stops, aql protects, from evil behavior, from immorality, from shar. So we are not defining the mahiyya of aql. This is a very important word. Remember this. Yani, a very important word used in philosophy and ilmul kalam, al-mahiyya. Essence. Essence. So mahiyya is something which is an answer to the question ma huwa. Or ma hiya when we refer to the feminine gender. What is it? And the answer will be the mahiyya. So if I say, what is this? The answer will be, this is a pen. Okay. So what is a pen? A pen is an object, like a stick, for example. It is used for writing. A pen is an object which spreads ink on paper. And this would be defining pen according to its mahiyya, according to its essence. When we say a pen is an object which is used for writing, now this is defining a pen by its function, not by its mahiyya. Writing is the function of pen. But what is the mahiyya of the pen? Mahiyya of the pen, it is like a stick, or this is just an example. We can define it in different ways. Or it is an object which spreads ink on paper. But again, this mahiyya has changed in our times. We have, for example, this pen which does not spread ink on paper. This is an electronic pen. Okay, so maybe this definition is not so comprehensive, so on and so forth. Now, can we understand the mahiyya of aql? Can we explain aql by its mahiyya? We cannot, because we cannot perceive it. We cannot see its mahiyya. It is a metaphysical thing. That's why the Arabs, they resorted to explaining it by its effect. And this is true with all metaphysical realities. Anything which cannot be perceived by senses, or which is not mahsus, which cannot be perceived by his senses, we cannot define it by mahiyya, because we don't know. We cannot perceive it by senses. So, for example, if I say define sadness, what is the mahiyya of sadness? How does sadness look? What is the weight of sadness? What is the shape of sadness? You cannot define it, because sadness is a metaphysical reality. We cannot perceive it by senses. You will define sadness by its effect, like crying, frowny face, upset, mood is down. These are all effects. These are all, this is athar of the sadness. But sadness is a feeling. We cannot define the mahiyya of feeling, because we cannot perceive feeling. That's why they defined it by its athar. Okay, and this is the case with almost all masadir. Yani, aql is a masdar. I think in English, jirant, masdar. Masdar is, in Arabic grammar, masdar is ismu ma'na. It is the name of meaning, not ismu dhat. It is not the name of being. So when we say aql, we are not defining the mahiyya. We are not defining the essence of aql. We are only defining the meaning of aql. The athar here, the athar, the effect. Okay, so this is the case. The things which are mahsus, which we can perceive by five senses, we can define them according to their mahiyat, according to their essences. But the things which are metaphysical, which we cannot perceive by our senses, which are not mahsus, we cannot define them according to their mahiyya. We can only define them according to their effect or the meaning. And this is applying Arabic grammar in ilmul kalam and falsafa. This is what we have lost. The interaction with different ulum and istithmar of these ulum. Istithmar, cultivating the ulum of Islam. There is fragmentation in teaching methodology. You may have, in our times, a master of Arabic grammar, but he does not know how to apply Arabic grammar in extracting the meanings of the Quran, new meanings. You may have a master of a particular field of knowledge, but he does not know how to cultivate that field in different fields or in understanding generally. This is what we lack. Okay, so we have memorized knowledge, we have memorized grammar, we have memorized fiqh, we have memorized usul al-fiqh and these fields, but we don't know how to cultivate it. This is the malaka which we have to teach to our students. The malaka, the potential, the capability, quality of using these principles and ulum in extracting understanding. Now the question is, this is a philosophical question. We have understood that the realities which are beyond senses, the realities which are metaphysical, we cannot define them according to their mahiyya. The realities which are perceived by senses, we can define them by our mahiyya. But this also is disagreed upon. And we will talk about this when we discuss about the question, is knowledge possible? What we perceive by our senses, is it actually and in reality the same as we perceive it? So for example, I see this table in front of me. I perceive it. If you ask me about the mahiyya of this table, ma huwa, what is it? I can define, I can say table has this particular shape, table has legs, table has this, table has that. I can define. But I know this table is made of matter, and matter is made of atoms. And what I see fixed in front of me, it's not moving, but in reality, it's moving, it's changing. Every moment, it's changing. Every moment, it is dying. So all matter is dying every moment. A human being, we see a human being, he is changing every moment. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every nafs is tasting death every moment. Dha'iqatul maut. Reflect on the word here, dha'iqa, which is noun, ism. It is not verb. Ism, it shows thubut. And this is intrinsic quality of every being. So dha'iqa does not mean will taste death. Dha'iqa means is tasting death. Because every being, created being, is experiencing change every moment. Cells are dying, new cells are taking its place, so on and so. We all know this. So is it in mahsusat, in realities we can perceive by our senses, can we understand the real essence of those things? There is disagreement. There are philosophers and scholars who say we cannot understand things as they really are. Impossible. We can only understand things in the method of, by the method of taqreeb. We can go near to that thing. We can go near to the essence of that thing, but we cannot understand that particular thing as it really is. For this reason, the scholars have disagreed about the definition of knowledge itself. How do we define knowledge? Ilm. Particularly this definition, when they said knowledge is knowing a thing as it is, knowing the reality of a thing, knowing the mahiyya, essence of a thing. They said this is wrong definition. We can never understand a thing as it really is. We can go near to it. Imam al-Razi, rahimahullah, has explained it beautifully in some of his works, inshallah. We will read that in the next sessions. So there is disagreement. But let's take the opinion, or at least even mahiyya. They say mahiyya can be understood, but in a limited way. You cannot understand a thing as it really is. You see the table, but you cannot see the atoms moving in it with your naked eyes. Or the movement which is happening, the change which is happening at the atomic level, you cannot see that. You can see the physical table in front of you. So if you cannot see or perceive the table with all its details, you cannot say, I know the table. So when you say, I know the table, you only mean, I know some aspects of this table, not the reality or mahiyya of this table. But we can say that we can understand the mahiyya of mahsusat only. Okay? That's why Allah is not mahsus. Allah cannot be perceived by senses. Allah is ma'qul. Allah can be understood by aql. There are many realities which can be understood by aql, not by hiss, not by mushahada, not by senses. So here we have understood that there are two types of realities in this universe. Realities. Al-mahsusat, and al-ma'qulat. Easy. Mahsus means hiss. Hiss is the sensory perception. Realities which we can perceive by our senses. We can see them, we can touch them, we can feel them, we can taste them, we can smell them, we can hear them, the five senses. And there is discussion about senses also. Are senses restricted to five or not? We will not go into that. Maqulat is the realities which can be perceived by aql only. We cannot see them, we cannot feel them, we cannot perceive them by five senses, we cannot touch them, we cannot taste them, we cannot smell them, we cannot hear them, we cannot see them. We cannot perceive them by five senses, but they exist. We can perceive them by aql. And by aql we mean the aqli arguments. There are different rational arguments which lead to maqulat. Like this argument. The dilala of athar on mu'athir. By effect, we extract that there is a cause behind that effect. So when we see the tear, we say there is sadness behind this tear. We cannot see the sadness. Sadness is ma'qul. The feelings are ma'qul, maqulat. But we can see the tear. So we see, oh, this person is crying. He must be sad. This person, from his face expression, which we can see, we can feel it, we can perceive it by our senses. We say, oh, he is sad. And this applies on all feelings. Happiness, for example. We see a person who is, and we are able to, this is our quality as human beings, we're able to differentiate in a subtle way. So we are able to differentiate between the tear of sadness and the tear of happiness. Some people, they cry in happiness. So we say, oh, no, he's not crying because of sadness. He's crying because of happiness. We are able to differentiate. These are maqulat. The problem with modern Western empirical thought, or modern man, modern human being, who is blindly following the Western thought, unfortunately Muslims also, who have this great khair and knowledge based on wahi from Allah, they deny maqulat. They say maqulat don't exist. The existence is only what we can perceive. So in this kainat, in this universe, we only have mahsusat, no maqulat. This is the problem. This is the problem. And it is strange when some people think that modern Western thought is about aql. It is rational. Religion is blind faith. Science is rationality. They don't know. This is very strange, because modern Western thought, empirical methodology of understanding the reality, denies aql. It's against aql. It is only confined in mahsus. Okay. And in fact, the Western Renaissance, it was against aql, against maqulat. So when they deny maqulat, they also reject al-kulliyat. Al-kulliyat. The abstracts, or the higher principles, or absolutes. There are no absolutes. Whatever science, philosophy, social sciences, psychology, knowledge, with its different fields, we have to restrict it to mahsusat only. there are no kulliyat, because kulliyat are connected with maqulat. So kulliyat are absolutes. Absolutes don't exist. And in this understanding, they disagreed with their own legacy also. The early Western philosophers, at least the philosophers of Western antiquity. Okay, for example, how do we understand ethics? We say stealing is bad and honesty is good. Why? How? Before we declare stealing bad, we must have a kulliyah, we must have an absolute meaning of badness or evil. Why is stealing bad? Because stealing involves this and that meaning. Stealing involves taking the wealth of others by wrongful means, right? This is a kulliyah. So you must have a principle, an absolute, an objective principle, and you apply the juz'iyat. You apply the actions, for example, of human beings to that principle. If you don't have, you can never reach objectivity. And this is the pinnacle of the modern Western civilization. No reality, no objectivity in all fields. Everything is subjective. No ultimate truth, no reality, because they deny ma'kulat, they deny kulliyat. I'm not going into the subtle details in Western philosophy and Muslim philosophy. This is a broad classification, understanding these matters in a broad way, in a broader perspective. Why is honesty good? Why is honesty good? You have to define it. And when you define it, it means you're giving a principle and you're judging that particular action according to that principle, or you're applying that principle in that particular action. You were walking and you lost your purse, your bag, and someone picked it up. And when you reached home, you realized you have lost a lot of money. You have lost your purse. You have lost some important documents, and he called you and he gave it back. This is honesty. And you appreciated this person. This action of giving your bag back to you is an action. It is neither good or bad. It is only an action, taking the bag and giving back to you. Full stop. What makes it good is the principle of honesty, which you define before this action. This action has not defined honesty. Honesty has its own definition. And you apply that definition to this action. You say, oh, this is honesty, because he did not keep it. Right? So we have two forms of realities, al-mahsusat and al-maqulat. Maqulat is a different area than mahsusat. Maqulat has its own method. Maqulat has its own manhaj, which is different from mahsusat. Okay, so you may understand something from mahsus, from the reality you perceive. Mahsusat is also valid, yani we're not denying it. We Muslims, we don't fall into fragmentation of reality. We accept reality as a whole in a harmonious way. Yani we accept the harmony, the balance in this wujud. So we don't deny mahsusat and we only accept maqulat, or we don't deny maqulat and we only accept mahsusat. No, we don't do that. We only want to specify the role of these areas. So we say mahsusat has its role and manhaj, and maqulat has its role and manhaj. We should not mess them up. So for example, the example of misunderstanding which happens when we don't understand these roles is the problem of evil, which is one of the foundations for atheism, even between Muslims, particularly in challenging times. We're living in challenging times, economy, food crisis, different forms of diseases, new diseases, challenging times. It affects the psychology of a human being, particularly people who are very weak in iman. So they fall to these false principles and realities, and they fall into the trap of atheism, for example. So see the istidlal, reflect on this istidlal and the problem in this istidlal. An atheist or a person who falls into this trap, he says, from mahsus, I see pain. I see a young child born with the condition which is painful, like cancer. So I see this pain around me, even in young children, even in babies who have not done any wrong, who have not committed any sin. So this pain has been extracted by the methodology of mahsusat. You perceive it, and you see the pain. You see this child crying and you perceive it. Okay, so this pain here is based on what? Mahsus. Mahsus. Okay, this is correct, fine. Then the same person, he says, God is Hakim, wise. Or God is good, the source of all good. So God cannot give pain because God is good, God is wise, and God has positive qualities of perfection. How can he give pain to a baby, a child who has not committed any wrong? Okay, so God does not exist. Or there are two gods, the God of good and the God of evil, like in some Eastern religions, the God of light and the God of darkness. So there are two gods. Good comes from good God and evil comes from evil God. Good comes from the God of light and the evil comes from the God of darkness. Now reflect on this. Pain exists. It was based on mahsus. Okay, God is wise and good. This is not based on mahsus. Even the existence of God is not based on mahsus. This is based on ma'qul. Ma'qul. And you cannot perceive the reality of God by mahsus. So you have confused mahsus, the area of mahsus, with ma'qul. You have extracted the first premise, the first muqaddima. We say this is first premise, pain exists. The second premise is God is good, wise. So, and the result is God does not exist. Because if God existed, he would not give pain to the children. Or if God exists, he is not wise or good. There can be different conclusions which we extract from these two premises. We can extract God does not exist. We can extract there are two gods, God of good and God of evil. We can extract God is wise and good. He should not give pain. If he's giving pain, that means he is not a good God. He is a cruel God, na'udhu billah. So on and so forth. We can extract different conclusions. And this is not our topic now. But see, the first premises was extracted based on mahsus. The second premises was extracted based on ma'qul. And the conclusion will always be wrong. Because you have mixed the two areas without giving them their right. Because mahsus has its own realm or area and its own methodology, and ma'qul has its own methodology. So the conclusion is pain is bad, right? Or pain doesn't have any wisdom. Or pain is evil So you have concluded it. This conclusion is wrong because you have intermingled mahsus and ma'qul. First premises is from a different area. Second premises is from a different area. The conclusion will always be wrong. And this is according to the logic, the ilm of logic, because the first premises and the second premises leads to conclusion when both these premises are consistent. These are not consistent because first premise is from mahsus, second premises is from ma'qul. It will never lead to the conclusion. Yes, we have seen the pain. Pain exists. Of course, pain exists. Pain is disliked by human beings. Of course, it's disliked because it contains hardship, difficulty. We understand this by mahsus. But it does not mean that pain does not have any hikmah, wisdom, or pain does not have any purpose. Because pain does not have any purpose, or pain is evil, pain is bad. This belongs to ma'qul. It does not belong to mahsus. How does a person extract a ma'qul, a principle from ma'qulat, from mahsusat? This is wrong. I hope that you have understood. So from mahsus, you can only perceive pain, or you can reach at least the understanding that pain is disliked by human beings. We don't like pain because it contains hardship, right? But we cannot extract from mahsus that pain does not have any purpose. Pain is evil. No, we cannot extract that because the word evil and bad, it belongs to ma'qul. It does not belong to mahsus. This is the problem. This is the problem with the basic arguments, which seem to be rational, which seem to be consistent, which seem to be logical, but they lack basic logical justification. So when you say this is logical, why does pain exist in this universe? Why has God created pain? God does not exist, or he is evil God. This is logical. No, this is illogical according to the logic itself. Because if you study mantiq, logic, the science of logic, the premises must be consistent. So two premises which are inconsistent, which are from different areas, and you have confused them together, will always lead to wrong conclusion. Okay, so your khayal, your misunderstanding, your imagination, you have declared it rational argument. You have declared it logic. This is wrong. So coming back to the main point, realities are of two types, mahsusat and ma'qulat. In mahsusat, we can understand the mahiyya, or we can reach very near to the mahiyya of things. And in ma'qulat, we cannot understand the mahiyat. In ma'qulat, we have to define a thing by its effect or other rational principles. And this is how we understand Allah also. We cannot see Allah. We cannot touch Allah. We cannot perceive Allah by five senses. How do we know Allah? The same method, by athar. This universe is the athar of Allah. And this is the rational argument in the Quran also. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to reflect on the athar, on the effect of the qudra and irada and great will of Allah, which is this universe. Reflect on the design, reflect on the camel, reflect on the mountains, reflect on the diversity, reflect on the fruits, vegetables. The water is one water, same water, but diversity comes from Allah. Reflect on the athar around you. So this athar leads us to mu'athar. The effect leads us to the cause. We cannot see the cause. We cannot perceive the cause. We cannot, this cause is not from mahsusat. He is from ma'qulat. Okay. This is a very important principle here, because modern Western thought has rejected ma'qulat and kulliyat also. And this resulted in rejecting any form of objectivity. What we have is mahsus. You want to understand anything, reality, you're stuck with mahsus. This is the problem. So mahsus will lead us to subjectivity, no objectivity, conjecture, dhann. Okay, going back to the discussion about aql. Now, how do Muslim philosophers define aql? They say in explaining the reality, this universe, they say there are two realities or two beings, existent beings in this universe: Jawhar and Arad. Yani this is the basic construction of philosophers, accepted by mutakallimin also, with some differences, disagreements. Jawhar is the being which is mujarrad from madda. It is not composed of matter. So it belongs to maqulat. Mujarradat, jawahir, mujarradat. Mujarrad, it is abstract reality. But by abstract, we don't mean it does not exist. It is only in the mind of a human being. No, by abstract, we mean it is not made of matter. Okay, like God himself, but of course they say God is not Jawhar. But yani, God is not matter. God is not, God does not have the qualities of, God does not have the qualities of the creation. Okay, so Jawhar is a substance. You can use the word substance for it. Substance. And Ard is the accident, or an accident. Accident is a more philosophical term. Let's use qualities. Ard does not have separate existence. Ard, it exists in Jawhar, in substance. So like the color. Color does not have separate existence. Color is connected with a thing. So this book is red. That flower is yellow. This redness and yellowness does not have a separate existence. It will always exist with the flower. It will always exist with the book, with Jawhar. But Jawhar has separate existence. Like the shapes, for example. Shapes are arad, shape. Shape does not have separate existence. We can never understand shape or remove it from the substance. Okay, so we say this box is of square shape, or that thing is round, triangle. Okay, so we cannot separate the shape. Shape exists with that thing. That thing has a shape, right? So arad, qualities, they exist with jawahir. And in jawahir, they say this universe is made of jawahir. This universe is made of these substances, and in substances we have arad. In jawahir, they say the basic element of this wujud or jawahir is jawharun fard. We can call it basic element, which is undivisible, which cannot be divided. And there are some people who don't understand ilmul kalam in a deep way. They thought that by Jawhar Fard, the scholars of kalam, they mean atoms. And before the modern age, people believe that atoms cannot be divided. Atoms cannot be broken. Now, in modern science, modern age, we know that atoms can be divided. So this nazariya, this theory of Jawhar Fard has become obsolete. But this is not the case. By Jawhar Fard, the scholars of kalam, they don't mean atom. They mean the basic element, which can not be divided. So atom can be divided, but when we reach the basic element, we reach a substance which cannot be further divided. This is what they call Jawhar Fard. Okay. So it is mujarrad anil madda. It does not belong to mahsus. It belongs to ma'kul. But because we cannot perceive it, by the senses. Okay. So this is the philosophical view of the universe. Universe is composed of jawhar and arad. Now coming to the aql. How do Muslims, philosophers understand aql? They say aql. So we have substances which we can perceive by the five senses, and we have substances which we cannot perceive by the five senses. Right? So they say aql is jawharun basit. I'm not going into the definitions. We will not go into that. Aql is jawharun basit. It means aql, basit here, we can translate it as simple. And jawhar is the substance. Again, substance. Basit means mujarrad anil madda. Al mujarrad anil madda. Al mujarradu anil madda. Madda is matter. Mujarrad is devoid of matter. Yani it is not made up of matter. Aql is something which exists, but it is not made up of matter. It is jawharun basitun, which exists. It has existence in itself, and it exists in the jism of a human being, but it is not a jism. Okay, so now we reach the basic classification or difference of opinion between the mainstream scholars, ilmul mutakallimun, and the philosophers in understanding aql. So aql for philosophers is not a jism, is not a body. No, it is not a body. But for mutakallimun or mainstream scholars, Muslim scholars, it is a body. Okay, so jism. But for mutakallimun, it is jismun latifun. It is a spiritual body, or it is a very fine body. Okay. Jismun kathifun is the compound body, the body which is visible. We can see it, we can touch it, the body, the skin, the flesh, the bones. This is body, but they call it jismun kathifun. Kathif, yani it's compound. We can see it, we can touch it, we can break it, we can rip it apart. Aql is jismun latifun. It is jismun latifun. It is body, but it is latif. It is fine. It cannot be touched. It cannot be ripped apart. It cannot be felt by five senses. This is the main disagreement between philosophers and mutakallimun. Another disagreement, which is also main between them, is philosophers consider aql as individual existence. Individual existence. Yani it has its own existence in the body, of course, but it is separate. It does not reside in anything. It has its own existence. The mutakallimun, the mainstream scholars, they consider aql, so individual existence means jawhar, right? Jawhar. So for philosophers, aql is jawhar, individual existence. For mutakallimun, aql is arad. Aql is one of the qualities of ruh, soul, which is jismul latifun. So soul in itself is jism, according to the mainstream scholars. It is a body, but latif, fine, which cannot be, it is not like the physical body. Okay, that's why they say it is jismun ruhaniyun. Some scholars, they use these words. It is a spiritual body. It is body, but it's latif, it's not kathif. But for philosophers, aql, they use aql and soul in the same meaning. Okay, so they say an-nafsul insani or an-nafsul natiqah. These are the terms which they use in their books. An-nafsul natiqah, which means intelligent soul. Intelligent soul. Natiqah means intelligent. Okay, intelligent soul refers to aql. So soul for philosophers means aql, and aql means soul, which is a jawhar, which is an existent thing, but not made of matter. Jawhar, substance, mujarrad anil madda. Okay, it exists, it is an existent thing, separate, it has individual existence, but it is not made of matter. Like angels, for example. Angels have existence, but they are not made of matter. And they have individual existence. We don't say angel means quality of something. Angel means potential of something. Angel is an instinct. No, angels have existence. They have individual existence. There are different angels. Jibreel has individual existence. Israfil has individual existence. The angel of death has individual existence. Okay, but they are not made of matter. Okay, this is, again, this takes us to another discussion. We as Muslims, we believe that there are existent things not made of matter, which separates us from the modern Western thought, which believes in only existences made of matter. So maqul, as I said, maqulat does not mean only in the mind of a person. Maqul has individual existence, but we cannot perceive it by five senses, or it is not made of matter. So there are realities not made of matter. They are beyond matter, or mujarrad anil madda. They are abstract realities. And by abstract, we mean not made of matter. Okay, this is what we believe. So for philosophers, soul and aql means the same thing, which is jawhar. But jawharun basit, simple, means it cannot be divided. It is not made of matter, but it has individual existence. Okay, but for mutakallimin, aql is a quality, a quwwa, potential, power, instinct, ghariza, instinct, quwwa, malaka, potential of ruh, soul. So for them, mutakallimun, the mainstream scholars, and this is the majority Muslim opinion. Generally Muslims, we believe that we have soul. Allah has created ruh. Allah has mentioned it in the Quran. The scholars have compiled works about that, the existence of soul. But soul, can we understand the mahiyya, the essence of the soul? We cannot. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the soul. They ask you about the essence of the soul. Because soul has been explained. Everything, the ahkam, the whole ilm of tasawwuf is about soul. How to train our soul, how to purify our soul, how to get rid of the evil qualities. The ayah of the Quran, it's speaking about the essence of the soul. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the mahiyya of the soul. No one can understand the mahiyya. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. This is what you can understand. Say, O Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, ruh is from the command of my Lord. Okay, so for the majority of mutakallimin, the mainstream, they say ruh has a jism, it has a body, but the body is latif, it is fine, it is not kathif. Like this, the outer body which we have. And aql resides in that soul. Aql is the quality, arad, of that soul. So if we summarize this, we can say philosophers, according to the philosophers, aql is jawhar. And according to the mutakallimin, including all scholars, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, others, aql is arad. Okay, I hope that you have understood. Inshallah, we will discuss about this more in the next sessions. I think we'll take 3 sessions about understanding aql. And inshallah, it will be helpful in understanding the epistemology of Islam, knowledge, sources of knowledge, theory of knowledge, because we believe in maqulat, we believe in the existences which are devoid of matter, and we believe in other realities, which separates us from the modern Western thought. And as we have agreed that we will only focus on understanding the Islamic perspective, we cannot go into the Western perspective, but you can compare. Those who are students of Western philosophy, you can compare, for example, the idea of some Western philosophers about aql, that aql at the basic level is same in all human beings. So it affects the educational project or educational philosophy, that we must have same curriculum according to a certain age. So the age group of 8 must have the same curriculum, age group of 10, a different curriculum, but the children who are of the same age group, they have the same curriculum, because aql at that age is same. So there are no different uqul. This is against the Muslim or Islamic philosophy of aql and epistemology. You can compare if you're studying Western philosophy, but we'll focus on understanding the Islamic perspective. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding of Deen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding of our worldview. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive the mistakes and shortcomings in these sessions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us steadfast and consistent in these sessions. See you inshallah in the next session, in which we will talk about understanding aql according to the perspective of mutakallimin. Okay, and then we will reach to the conclusion. And by this, we will try to also appreciate the faqr of aql. And forget about using aql. It would be the last step. How to use our aql. The people who have tried to understand these matters, they disagree about the essence of aql itself. Now, can we make aql judge for understanding the realities? And as Muslims neglect wahi, when someone tells us believe in angels, oh, this is against aql. Aql is this disagreement between philosophers, and we are talking about Islamic thought. And beyond Islamic thought, there is disagreement between the scholars, Western scholars, non-Muslim scholars, the early antiquity, and after that Christian theologians about these matters. So we cannot make aql judge. We have to understand the role of aql. We have to use aql in the best way. We have to understand it according to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How should I use my aql? What are the limits? How can I protect my aql from transgression? So on and so forth. Inshallah, see you in the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.